Hello friends. Welcome to Zube Stories, where every story hides a little secret just waiting for you. Are you ready for a ride? Settle in, watch gracefully, and let the magic unfold. Don't forget to subscribe and share, because some stories are too good to keep to yourself. Elena Morgan had always seen marriage as a partnership, a sacred, unbreakable bond meant for two individuals to build not only a life, but also a legacy. From the moment she laid eyes on Victor Morgan at a networking event during her senior year of college, she felt a spark that eclipsed everything she'd experienced before. Victor, a charming and ambitious business student, seemed to embody every trait she admired: intelligence, confidence, and drive. He was her senior by a year, on the verge of launching his own startup that promised to revolutionize online retail. She was a budding finance prodigy, adept at spotting hidden potential in balance sheets and business plans. Their connection grew in library study sessions and long nighttime calls, each confiding hopes and big plans. What sealed Elena's trust was how he spoke of collaboration and partnership. She envisioned a joint empire, two halves of a single entity, forging a future together. In the early days of their marriage, Elena wholeheartedly supported Victor's ideas, content to play a more traditional role as he built their new venture. She believed sacrifices were part of a shared dream. She spent countless hours reviewing proposals Victor brought home, meticulously analyzing every figure. He'd promised that once the business took off, they would invest in her ambitions too. For a while, it seemed their dream was coming true. Together, they created a startup specializing in curated online marketplaces. Elena's financial savvy helped woo investors, while Victor's charisma drew in promising partnerships. Headlines praised them as a dynamic duo, the Morgans, tech's new golden couple. The euphoria was real. They thrived on a sense of unity. But as the company grew, so did Victor's ego. Media attention increasingly revolved around him alone. Public relations specialists deemed him the face of the venture, leaving Elena's contributions largely unrecognized. Even as she rationalized that numbers people rarely took the spotlight, the imbalance unsettled her. Their schedules intensified. Late-night dinners replaced romance, and a quick peck on the cheek replaced the easy intimacy they once shared. When the startup received a significant second round of funding, Victor's hunger for recognition ballooned. He traveled frequently, citing endless networking conferences. Elena stayed behind, running day-to-day operations, assuring herself that this phase was temporary. Bit by bit, she sensed a shift. He began forgetting important dates. He dismissed her input in strategic meetings as overly cautious, though her caution had averted financial disaster more than once. Annoyance at his behavior turned to concern when she discovered a string of lavish receipts hidden in his office. Designer handbags, five-star hotel bookings, none of them for her. She tried confronting him gently, but he brushed off her questions, claiming each expense was necessary for business relations. Despite her growing suspicions, Elena clung to the idea that they were still a team. She wanted to believe this was just another rough patch in the high-stakes world of entrepreneurship. Yet each day, the tension at home worsened. She'd stay up waiting for Victor, only to have him stumble and drunk, acting as though she was invisible. On rare occasions when they did talk, he seemed distant, bored by their once-shared passion for business strategy. Her heartbreak was palpable, but she tried to swallow her hurt, clinging to memories of how he used to be. One evening, she accidentally glimpsed his phone screen, noticing repeated messages from someone named Sabrina Cross. Late-night calls, heart emojis, unignorable signs. Instead of leaping to accusations, Elena tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, recalling how he used to say communication is everything. But his actions screamed otherwise. Then, in a moment of carelessness, Victor used Elena's laptop to check his cloud account. He forgot to sign out. A notification popped up, a diamond necklace shipping receipt, addressed to Sabrina. Confusion and betrayal hit Elena like a tidal wave. She felt the sting of humiliation and realized she could no longer hide from the truth. The final blow came a week later when she found a dinner reservation receipt for two on her birthday, one Victor had allegedly missed because of last-minute meetings. The extravagant meal included a bottle of champagne. The bill was signed with his unmistakable scrawl. That night, confronted with the evidence, he barely tried to deny it, muttering excuses about potential investors. Elena's world teetered. She was exhausted from burying suspicions and excusing him. Bitterness coursed through her as she realized how thoroughly she had been used. Even so, she tried once more to save their relationship. She proposed a weekend getaway, just the two of them. He brushed her off without remorse. In the ensuing days, guilt morphed into anger, fueling a sense of urgency to protect herself. If Victor was funneling money into hidden luxuries, what else might he be doing? She recognized that their partnership had transformed into a charade. He treated her as an afterthought, and she was done being a silent victim. She spent long nights reflecting, recalling the library sessions where he once praised her insights, the hush of dormitory halls where they discussed world-changing ideas. How had they ended up here, strangers under the same roof, lying to each other with every breath? Her heart ached for that lost idealism, but reality had opened her eyes. Slowly, a plan began to form. She would gather evidence, secure her finances, and leave on her own terms. She would no longer be complicit in Victor's betrayal or ignore the humiliations he inflicted. Beneath her heartbreak, a quiet resolve grew. She wasn't just a support act to his ambitions. She was the one who had propped him up, saved countless deals, and created the financial backbone of their operation. No longer would she cry herself to sleep. The illusions of their marriage had burned away, leaving a scorched but determined woman. She would not let Victor define her life story. If he insisted on discarding her, he would discover just how formidable she could be on her own. A new chapter was unfolding, one in which she would reclaim her power, even if it meant dismantling the empire she had helped build. Elena's suspicions solidified on a night that felt ripped from a bad script. After a major product launch gala, she realized Victor had vanished. Worried, she searched the upscale venue, eventually finding him tucked away in a private lounge with a beautiful younger woman in a shimmering gold gown. The woman's laugh rang out, high and mocking, making Elena's stomach churn. She peered in through a half-closed door. Victor was leaning against a mahogany table, whispering flirtatious remarks that made the woman, clearly Sabrina cross, giggle and play with her hair. Elena's heart sank, yet she didn't burst in. She didn't want a public scene. Slipping away, she could still hear Sabrina's laugh echo in her ears. That ride home with Victor was more strained than ever. He spoke only of the event's success, ignoring Elena's silence. The next morning, she combed through his desk, finding a gift box containing a sapphire bracelet inscribed "To my golden girl, forever shining." It was a youthful, flashy piece, not remotely Elena style. One evening, she decided to follow him. He claimed he was taking a potential investor to La Rue, an intimate restaurant. Parked discreetly across the street, she watched him escort Sabrina into the dimly lit entrance. Through a window, she glimpsed them seated in a corner booth, toasting with expensive champagne. Sabrina's gaze flickered around the room, and for a brief instant, their eyes met. Elena flinched at the triumphant smirk that curled Sabrina's lips. She left before they could confront each other, sick to her core. Still, she had seen enough to confirm that Sabrina was no hidden secret. The mistress knew exactly who Elena was, and openly reveled in the affair. Crucially, Elena soon discovered that Sabrina had become enmeshed in the business's finances. Expense reports labeled consulting services led back to Sabrina's lavish dinners, spa treatments, and hotel bills. The amounts were staggering. Elena felt her chest tighten at the betrayal. One late afternoon, when most employees had gone, Elena spotted Sabrina in a small conference room, flipping through documents. A half-eaten box of macarons sat nearby. Fighting a swell of nerves, Elena stepped in. Sabrina looked up, arching a perfectly manicured eyebrow. "Elena," Sabrina said smoothly, voice dripping with condescension. "Didn't expect you here." Elena stood tall. "I wanted to see what you're working on. I've noticed some interesting expense reports." Sabrina shrugged, crossing her arms. "I consult for Victor. If you have questions, ask him." Elena's anger simmered. "He's not here. So I'm asking you, what value are you adding to the company?" A small, smug smile crossed Sabrina's face. "Value beyond what you could ever offer, I'm sure." She didn't bother to hide the implication. Elena's nails dug into her palms. She would not lash out. She needed composure. There are boundaries in any professional setting. Stealing from company funds crosses them. Sabrina let out a laugh. "Stealing? Oh, please. Victor approves everything. If there's a problem, maybe he doesn't trust you to manage the bigger picture. Elena's voice was taut. I'm not here to argue. Just be aware. I'm paying attention. Sabrina's smile never faltered. Good. Keep watching. Elena left, chest tight with anger and shame. She retreated to her car, allowing tears of frustration to slide down her cheeks. She felt small, humiliated by a younger woman who had invaded not just her marriage, but the company she helped build. Yet even through the pain, a spark of resolve flickered. She drove home, replaying every smug word. If Sabrina thought she could waltz in and replace Elena, she was in for a shock. Elena resolved to fight back, but she would do it on her own terms. Public outbursts would only make her look weak. If she wanted to protect herself, she needed indisputable proof of misdeeds. Night after night, Elena combed through receipts, emails, and financial statements. She documented everything that pointed to Victor's negligence and Sabrina's profiteering. Each new discovery stung, but also sharpened her strategy. She recognized she could not simply walk away. A divorce without evidence would leave her vulnerable. She needed solid grounds for a strong settlement. The more she dug, the clearer it became that their entire marriage had become a farce. Victor was investing more energy into Sabrina's whims than into the company's growth. Investors who once supported him blindly were beginning to question the firm's direction, citing missed milestones and ballooning costs. Despite it all, Victor continued to lavish attention on Sabrina, publicly defending her role in the company. One night, Elena overheard him on the phone, bragging about Sabrina as the future and dismissing Elena as a stepping stone. The words made her stomach twist. She could still taste the bitterness hours later, lying in bed while Victor stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, ignoring her presence entirely. She realized something. The heartbreak would soon mutate into something more dangerous if she didn't channel it productively. While Victor played house with his mistress, Elena would be preparing her exit. She would be diligent, leaving no loose ends. It wouldn't just be a divorce, it would be a complete extrication from the toxic environment he created. All the while, Sabrina continued her masquerade, flaunting her influence with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She appeared at business functions on Victor's arm, smiling for cameras that once eagerly snapped photos of Elena. The contrast hit Elena hard, but she swallowed her pride and pressed on with her private investigation. Steadily, the puzzle came together, a pattern of personal indulgences disguised as business expenses, questionable transfers benefiting Sabrina, inflated consulting invoices. Elena saved them all, a digital fortress of incriminating evidence that she would unleash when the time was right. She felt a sense of power in the secrecy of her work. If Victor and Sabrina were playing with illusions, then Elena would show them the reality of consequences. The morning after Elena's run-in with Sabrina, she woke to an eerie hush in the house. Victor had left early, likely to avoid her questions. Though her heart ached, she forced herself into action, determined to collect the proof she needed. At the office, she spent hours poring over financial records. Strange charges labeled consulting fees appeared with alarming frequency, each tied to Sabrina's name. Meanwhile, company expenses seemed inflated beyond standard operating costs. With every invoice or payment slip she found, Elena's fury grew, but so did her resolve. If Victor believed he could deceive her forever, he was mistaken. Late one evening, her suspicions were confirmed by a phone call she overheard in Victor's private study. She was just a stepping stone, he said, tone dripping with disdain. I found my real partner now. The words struck Elena like a slap, yet she forced herself to stay silent and record each syllable. Evidence, she reminded herself, would be her armor. That night, Victor came home reeking of alcohol. He barely acknowledged Elena, dropping his keys and slumping onto the couch. Watching him, she wondered how they had drifted so far from the couple they once were. She recalled their old dreams, the late-night brainstorming sessions, the shared ambition for building something meaningful. Now, those memories felt tainted by betrayal. Determined to protect her interests, Elena reached out to Sarah, a close friend from college who had become a well-known lawyer. Over a secure line, she detailed her findings, financial discrepancies, suspicious transactions, and Victor's open displays of infidelity. Sarah's advice was blunt: gather everything, keep it safe, and wait for the right moment to act. Emboldened, Elena compiled digital and physical copies of every incriminating document she could find. She encrypted essential files and stored backups off-site, ensuring that even if Victor discovered her actions, he couldn't destroy her evidence. Each day felt like a battle waged in silence, the tension at home thick enough to suffocate her. One afternoon, she nearly collided with Sabrina in the office hallway. Sabrina's smug smile hinted that she felt invincible. Rather than engage, Elena walked away, reminding herself that public confrontations would only weaken her position. She had to maintain the image of a composed wife, at least until she could strike on her own terms. In the midst of her covert struggle, Elena wrestled with guilt. Sneaking around, recording conversations, and building a secret case against her husband didn't align with her natural instincts. Yet, Victor's betrayal demanded a response, and she refused to let her life become collateral damage. Their marriage might be in ruins, but she still had her dignity and a future to protect. At times, she allowed herself moments of reminiscence, the warmth of Victor's early affection, his excitement when they first launched their company. Those memories felt like ghosts haunting a life she no longer recognized. The realization that the man she loved had willingly destroyed their bond cut deeper than any business betrayal could. Still, Elena pushed forward. Each new piece of evidence was a stepping stone toward freedom. She'd once built a dream alongside Victor, and now she was ready to build a new life for herself. All she needed was the right time to break away. On a particularly tense evening, she emerged from Victor's study with a crucial set of documents under her arm. Pausing by the window, she stared out at the glittering skyline. The city lights had once symbolized boundless opportunity for the Morgans' shared future. Now, they illuminated a darker road, one paved with deceit, but also with Elena's rising determination. In that moment, she silently vowed that no matter how much Victor had taken from her, she would reclaim her power. Armed with evidence, a legal ally, and her own unwavering drive, she was prepared to face whatever storms lay ahead. The final betrayal had been uncovered, and it was only a matter of time before the reckoning began. Days after her confrontation with Sabrina, Elena knew she needed a precise plan to leave her toxic marriage. The emotional strain was relentless, but she refused to let fear dictate her future. She had contributed far too much to Victor's empire to walk away empty-handed. Her first move was to reach out to Miles Carter, a college friend renowned for forging lucrative deals while keeping delicate matters under wraps. Nervously, she revealed everything: Victor's affair, the suspicious expenses, her intention to escape before he could blindside her. Rather than judging her, Miles listened calmly. "You've always been a financial genius," he said in a reassuring tone. "Let me connect you with discreet backers who respect your expertise." Elena felt relief. They arranged to meet at a small cafe outside the city, far from prying eyes. Over steaming espresso, she laid out her plan: secure private funding, launch a shell corporation for future ventures, and quietly file for divorce, revealing her evidence only if Victor forced her hand. Miles introduced her to investors intrigued by her track record. She scheduled each pitch under personal errands, leaving Victor oblivious to her true intentions. Each successful deal stoked her confidence. Perhaps she could finally carve out a life free from his looming shadow. Late into the night, she pawed over the company's ledgers, extracting proof of Victor's reckless spending and underhanded attempts to enrich Sabrina. Emails, receipts, and credit card statements piled up. She stored them in encrypted drives, with backups in multiple locations. If Victor destroyed one cache, she had others. Meanwhile, he remained too absorbed in late-night escapades to notice her covert actions. She quietly filed divorce papers, instructing her attorney to seal them until she gave the signal. Signing her name felt like an act of liberation, though tinged with sadness for the love she once cherished. At home, tension was palpable. Victor returned at odd hours or sometimes not at all. Whenever Elena felt guilt, she reminded herself he had abandoned her emotionally and ethically. Her growing partnership with Miles brought an unexpected sense of reassurance. Unlike Victor, Miles valued her input, seeing her not just as a hidden asset, but a partner with vision. Their plans took shape quickly, a small investment firm fronted by a trusted figurehead, with Elena operating discreetly until the divorce was done. They'd share moments of levity, recalling old college memories. Elena realized how starved she was for genuine companionship. The contrast to her marriage was stark, fueling her resolve to break free. One evening, after finalizing a key contract, she wandered the penthouse she once adored. It looked the same, polished floors, panoramic windows, but now felt like a polished cage. Gazing at her reflection, she saw a woman tempered by betrayal yet fortified by resilience. In that silent moment, she renewed her vow to leave on her own terms. The battles ahead would be intense. Victor would defend his territory, Sabrina would push him to retaliate, and the tabloids would feast on any scandal. Yet Elena had allies. She had evidence, a plan, and a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. Above all, she was no longer the timid spouse waiting for affection that never came. She was Elena Morgan, financial strategist, emerging mogul, and a woman determined to reclaim her destiny. Soon, she would execute her plan, free from the confines of a marriage that had become her greatest trap. The morning Victor received the divorce summons, he barely glanced at the papers before letting out a harsh laugh. In his mind, Elena was still the meek partner he could outmaneuver. He had top-tier lawyers on retainer, legal sharks who thrived on devouring weaker opponents. Sabrina encouraged his arrogance. "Settle fast and be done," she urged, champagne glass in hand. "Then we can move on to bigger things." She was already eyeing real estate listings for vacation homes, seemingly unbothered by the company's precarious finances. Victor smirked, letting her confidence feed his own. "Elena's never fought me on anything," he said. "We'll throw her a small settlement, and she'll have no choice but to accept." He arrived at court flanked by his legal team, wearing a suit that fit like armor. Striding down the polished corridor, he exuded self-importance. His attorneys carried binders full of procedural tactics, convinced this would be quick and painless. Sabrina watched from the sidelines, her smile triumphant. Yet beneath this show, Victor couldn't ignore the nagging unease. Investors had pulled out, citing erratic spending. Overhead costs ballooned while critical projects languished. He told himself these were temporary setbacks. Without Elena's cautious approach, he believed he could simply hire another competent person. But when the hearing started, his confidence wavered. Elena entered calmly, her demeanor poised, as though she'd been planning for this moment. She was accompanied by Miles Carter and key figures from the investment community, former associates of Victor's who now sat on Elena's side. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Victor's lead lawyer rose with a prepared script, asserting that Elena's claims for substantial marital assets were overblown. But before he could build momentum, Elena's attorney countered with meticulously organized evidence: suspicious financial statements, questionable transactions linked to Sabrina, and documented misuse of company funds. The evidence landed like hammer blows. A collective gasp echoed in the gallery. Sabrina stiffened, her face blanching. Victor's smirk vanished. His attorneys frantically rustled papers, trying to refute allegations they hadn't anticipated. They'd prepared for a typical divorce dispute, not a full-scale expose of corporate malpractice. As the session wore on, the judge's stern gaze fell on Victor's table. He realized the wife he had belittled was anything but helpless. She'd assembled an airtight case, pinpointing every shady expense he had tried to bury. By the time the judge adjourned, Victor's arrogance was replaced by barely contained rage. Sabrina rushed after him. "What happened? You said you had everything under control." His voice seethed. "I didn't expect her to go this far." He jerked away from her grasp, fury pulsing beneath his tailored facade. Camera flashes assaulted him as he exited the courthouse, ignoring reporters' shouted questions. Sabrina clung to his arm, but he barely felt her there. In the back of his mind, he replayed Elena's unflinching expression during the hearing. She had changed, no longer the woman who waited patiently for him to notice her. She was in command now, armed with unassailable proof. For the first time, Victor felt the real possibility of loss, a small quake of regret in his chest. His empire, carefully cultivated for public admiration, had begun to crumble under the weight of his own arrogance. Victor's self-assured facade continued to crack as the divorce proceedings advanced. His lawyers tried to regain control by demanding continuances, hoping to uncover doubt on Elena. Yet each delay only exposed more of his own missteps: shell invoices, bloated consulting fees, and a suspiciously high retreat budget tied to Sabrina's indulgences. When the case resumed weeks later, it attracted a swarm of media. Rumors of Victor's downfall had spread, fueled by talk of his affair with Sabrina. Camera crews lined the building's entrance, hungry for drama. Inside, Victor arrived with his phalanx of lawyers, though none exuded the confidence they once did. Elena walked in quietly, dressed in a tailored black dress that signaled her readiness for battle. She was joined by Miles Carter and influential investors supporting her newfound leadership. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Legal formalities began: property appraisals, financial audits, depositions. But tension peaked when each witness illuminated Victor's questionable dealings. A projector displayed documents linking company funds to Sabrina's lavish perks. The courtroom fell silent, stunned by the blatant misuse. Sabrina, sitting off to the side, visibly recoiled. Her smug demeanor faltered as she realized she was no longer shielded from scrutiny. Whispers spread through the gallery. Midway through, the courtroom doors swung open, admitting a small procession of well-dressed individuals, representatives of major investment firms who had once courted the Morgans. Their appearance caused an audible stay. The message was clear: they supported Elena now. Victor's eyes widened, his lawyers shifting uncomfortably. The judge rapped the gavel to regain order, but the impact was made. The tide had turned dramatically. News of Elena's strategic alliances reached reporters waiting in the corridor, igniting a flurry of speculation about who truly held power. During a brief recess, Elena leaned against a marble pillar, catching her breath. Miles gave a supportive nod. "You're winning them over," he whispered. She allowed herself a small smile, heart still racing. Across the hall, Sabrina hovered near Victor, who brushed her off impatiently. When proceedings resumed, Victor's lawyer tried a desperate attack, accusing Elena of doctoring records. Yet Elena's team quickly produced ironclad proof validating each document. The judge's patience wore thin with Victor's evasions. By adjournment, he stormed out, ducking the cameras that clamored for comment. Elena emerged soon after, flanked by Miles and her supporters. Microphones and flashing bulbs greeted her, but she stayed poised, declining to offer details. Speculation about the Morgan divorce soared to a fever pitch, with Elena at the center of headlines. Outside, she exhaled slowly under the midday sun, a sense of relief washing over her. Though the legal battle wasn't finished, she had shed the image of a docile spouse. She was now recognized as a force in her own right, protecting what she had built. Every step she took away from that courthouse felt lighter, a physical affirmation that she no longer lived under Victor's shadow. In the aftermath of that revealing day in court, Sabrina felt public scrutiny like never before. Articles labeled Victor Morgan's financial misconduct as blatant, and her own name was splashed across gossip columns. The internet was abuzz with speculation about who this Sabrina Cross really was. At first, she tried to dismiss the chatter. Surely Victor would fix everything. He'd once seemed invincible. But as damaging evidence mounted, associates distanced themselves. Invitations to exclusive functions evaporated. Even so-called friends whispered rumors, forcing her to see that her social standing was crumbling. She confronted Victor, demanding he end the divorce quickly so they could regroup. Under pressure, he snapped, "Do you think I like watching my business collapse?" His rage shattered the veneer of cool he once had. Unnerved, Sabrina realized the man she'd pinned her hopes on was drowning under legal fees and debt. Desperate, she attended a high-profile charity gala, one of her last remaining invitations. Floating across the ballroom in an older designer gown, she attempted to rekindle relationships. But she found only polite smiles and muttered excuses. Whispers about frozen accounts and lawsuits followed her. In a final bid, she cornered a venture capitalist she'd flirted with in the past, suggesting new opportunities. He excused himself with a dismissive nod. That was the moment her heart sank. In this world, fortunes changed in a blink. Her own had collapsed, leaving her isolated. Returning to the suite Victor had rented, she found him in a deep funk, staring at spreadsheets that glowed red with losses. He barely looked up. "You're back," he muttered, bitterness darkening his tone. The tension felt suffocating. "Don't you have any plan left?" she asked quietly, fear threading her voice. He snapped, "I'm fighting for my life here. There might not be a next move." The chill in his words jolted her. She had never been in this for love. She had pursued him for wealth and status. If those were disappearing, so was her reason for sticking around. Early the next morning, Sabrina packed her things while Victor was out. She left a toast note on the counter. "I can't watch everything fall apart. I'm sorry." Her exit was abrupt, but it felt necessary. She'd rather vanish than be dragged down in his downfall. In the elevator, she stared at her reflection in the polished doors. She'd built a glamorous persona, but it was fracturing. Without Victor's resources, she was just another social climber who bet on the wrong man and lost. Her heart thumped unevenly, torn between relief at escaping and dread over what came next. For now, fleeing felt like her only option. With Sabrina gone and Victor's credibility in tatters, Elena pushed forward on her new path. Though the divorce settlement wasn't finalized, she gained partial control of the struggling business. Initially, Victor thought offloading failing assets would ease his financial burdens, but Elena recognized a chance to rehabilitate what she had once helped create. She wasted no time. Leveraging her thorough knowledge of the company's finances, she restructured operations, slashing unnecessary expenditures and rebuilding departments from the ground up. Miles Carter, ever supportive, funneled new investors into her rebranded vision. Media outlets took note, painting her as the phoenix of finance, the once ignored spouse now orchestrating a corporate turnaround. Incremental successes added up. Revenues began to recover, and Elena's leadership style won praise. She attended panels on crisis management, fielding questions with unflappable poise. The headlines shifted, describing her transformation from betrayed wife to formidable business strategist. In her new corner office, Elena sometimes paused to reflect. Months earlier, she felt trapped and powerless. Now, she commanded the same rooms that used to overlook her. Each contract she signed felt like a personal victory, a tangible sign of how far she'd come. Rumors of her closeness with Miles spread. The media speculated about a power couple, hungry for juicy gossip. Elena didn't rush to deny it. Their connection was genuine, but it wasn't the sensational romance some outlets portrayed. What truly mattered was the respect they shared, the partnership of equals she had always longed for. During a celebratory dinner with investors, Elena delivered a short speech thanking those who believed in her. Their enthusiastic applause echoed. Afterward, she and Miles stood on a balcony, watching city lights glisten below. She felt a swell of gratitude that replaced old anxieties. The empire Victor once claimed now bore her imprint. As the night air brushed her face, Elena breathed in the promise of new horizons. She had risen from the ashes of betrayal, forging a future on her own terms. The glow of success was its own kind of solace, a silent affirmation that she had never been merely a stepping stone. She had always been the foundation. In a cramped apartment on the city's outskirts, Victor Morgan sat transfixed by the television. News segments showed Elena signing a high-profile deal that would expand her company's reach. She looked poised, confident, happier than he remembered. Bitterness twisted in his gut as he snapped the TV off. His life had unraveled at dizzying speed. Legal fees piled up, bank accounts dwindled, and business contacts ghosted him. Former friends vanished, not wanting to be associated with scandal. Even his parents, disappointed, kept a wary distance. At first, Victor consoled himself with thoughts of a comeback. But with each passing day, the reality sank in. His achievements had relied heavily on Elena's brilliance. Without her financial insights, the empire he had boasted about was a hollow shell. One evening, desperation drove him to reach out to her. He left voicemails, typed a rambling text apologizing for his actions. Her response was succinct. "I'm sorry it came to this." The words stung, but he couldn't blame her. He'd burned that bridge with his own arrogance. He considered showing up at her new office, imagining he might plead for forgiveness or offer to help. But every scenario in his mind ended with her looking at him with icy disinterest. Memories of how he'd once belittled her haunted him. He'd brushed off her capabilities, treated her as an accessory. Now the roles had reversed. He also recalled their earliest days, a time of shared goals, late-night brainwaves, endless excitement about the future. The painful irony was that he'd destroyed it all for a fling and a belief in his own invincibility. In moments of guilt, he questioned how he ever let someone like Sabrina overshadow a woman like Elena. With each new headline praising her turnaround, Regret gnawed at his conscience. She had built something far stronger than what they once had. His betrayal had, in a twisted way, paved her path to success. Alone in the fading light of his small living room, Victor downed cheap wine, trying to numb the ache of his mistakes. The once confident mogul was now a man overshadowed by his ex-wife's accolades. A wave of shame and longing converged in his chest, leaving him hollow. He thought of contacting Sabrina, but he suspected she'd ignore him too. She was gone, chasing another safety net. In losing Elena, Victor realized he had lost more than love or partnership. He'd lost the one person who believed in his potential when nobody else did. As neon lights flickered outside, he stared at his reflection in the dark TV screen, confronting the stranger he had become. Regret was all that remained, a stark reminder that he alone had orchestrated his downfall. If only he'd seen Elena's worth sooner. On the balcony of her new penthouse, a sleek, modern space overlooking the glittering skyline, Elena Morgan breathed in the evening air. The city lights below reminded her of how far she'd come. Beside her stood Miles Carter, steady and unwavering. Together, they reviewed final documents for a major acquisition that would solidify Elena's company as a formidable market force. In the distance, Victor watched from the street below, hidden in the anonymity of passing crowds. He had mustered the nerve to see her one last time, though he doubted she knew, or cared, that he was there. Standing in the glow of towering buildings, he felt small, no longer the self-assured entrepreneur who once thought he owned the world. Elena, unaware of Victor's gaze, exhaled softly as she signed the paperwork. The business she now helmed was worth millions, and her influence extended well beyond what she and Victor had originally built. She hadn't needed his approval to ascend. She only needed to believe in her own capabilities. Miles gave a quiet nod, sliding the final page into a polished folder. "That's it," he said, a note of pride in his voice. "You're officially leading one of the fastest-growing ventures in the region." A gentle smile tugged at Elena's lips. "We built this together," she replied. "But I'm ready for more." She turned to face the cityscape, remembering the nights she once spent crying in the shadows of her old penthouse. Now, those tears had been replaced by a fierce sense of purpose. As Miles excused himself to make a quick call, Elena took a moment to let her triumph sink in. Her phone buzzed, a message alert. Glancing down, she saw Victor's name. The text was short, "I'm sorry." She stared at it for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without replying, she set the phone aside. Below, Victor saw her silhouette move away from the railing. He couldn't guess her reaction to his apology, but part of him knew it didn't matter. She had become something greater than he ever let her be, and no words could change that now. Returning inside, Elena caught Miles's eye. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking if she was all right. She offered a reassuring nod. With the final contract signed and her future her own, Elena felt no need for revenge or vindication. Success was its own resounding answer, a statement that echoed through every deal she closed, every boardroom she commanded, and every life she chose to lead on her terms. She walked to the wide glass doors, shutting out the city's noise. The camera in her mind panned over the skyline one last time, a testament to the empire she had quietly become. In the hush of that moment, Elena accepted her new reality, a life shaped by her own resolve, no longer tethered to anyone else's vision. And as she placed the signed documents on her desk, she felt a deep, undeniable sense of peace. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, kindly hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating tales. I'd love to hear from you. What stood out to you, or what lesson did you take away from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, see you in the next story. With love, Zubay.